welcome to this short and sweet your conference series. We start today with our posters for conferences, and we're lucky this morning to have somebody from the UW Design Lab join us. So I'm going to stop sharing so Mandy can share her screen. So give me a second to do that. And we're going to learn a little bit about Design Lab and what they offer us. And then we'll jump into talking more about posters. So Mandy, if you want to take it away, that would be great.
Good. Just hitting share here. Can everybody see this?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so hi, my name is Mandy Morrow. I am the Associate Director of Design Lab. And yeah, I'm here to talk to you a little bit about Design Lab services, particularly how they relate to poster services. But I'll also throw out there that we also, help with presentations, a lot of things. Our mission is to teach people at UW-Madison's campus to design better. We have a mission that encapsulates working with the Wisconsin Idea and teaching people about digital literacy and how to navigate the world of digital scholarship. And right now, one of the things that we say is a drop of design thinking goes a long way in making people understand a little bit about how to communicate better in the digital world. So in Design Lab, we like to talk about the CAT principles. So we've created this sort of shared language of design. So if you were to come to Design Lab to get support with like one-on-one support, we would talk about the CAT. So we would ask you questions. So when we say CAT, we're not obviously talking about, meow cats, but we're talking about the conceptual, aesthetic, and technical elements of your project. So starting with the conceptual, what we ask about are things like, what are your goals? What are you trying to do with your project? Additionally, who is your intended audience? Who are you trying to communicate your goals to? Or who are you trying to connect with at your conference? And then we talk a lot about telling your story. I think one of the biggest things that we see in poster design, particularly, is that people are so focused on, making it look good or making it, cover as much as possible that they forget about the concept of telling your story of what was your research, what was your project, how did it work, why are you interested in it, the sort of things that are connected to you rather than connected to your topic. And we also talk a lot about the focus of you as the presenter in posters, not just about your poster itself, but about you as the person who is going to be there in front of your poster talking about what's going on and how that's important as well.
Hey, Mandy.
And yeah,
I don't mean to
sorry.
interrupt. Your screen is kind of flickering a little bit.
Oh,
Do you
oh
mind if
no.
you like unshare and then share again? Maybe that will sort of help.
Yeah, let's
Okay.
try that. A bunch of pictures here, just kind of undergraduates from the undergraduate research symposium, which is a program that happens every year. But this is about like, so sorry, coming back to the CAT when we're talking about what are research posters. We work with a lot of folks who have never done research posters before. And so we talk about things like how to interact with people. So not just about like the poster itself and its design, but remembering that like, you're going to have these sort of small one-on-one interactions. You've got that next slide is an image of folks just kind of interacting with your poster without you being there. So like there's obviously that sort of thing you have to consider when designing a poster as well. Plus you are in a large room. So on the next slide, an example of what, it looks like to be one poster in a large, gigantic conference space. And how can you draw people to your poster? So one of the things we think about in conceptually is what sort of things can you do? Like what title can you come up with, or what visual can you think of that'll help draw people to you in this room of hundreds of posters that somewhat look the same. And then all of that comes down to getting your point across effectively, which is the next slide, please. We are trying to get people who are working on posters to understand, that there's lots of different ways to get your point across. So here is, what we're trying to do. Another thing that we teach when we're working with folks is talking a little bit about aesthetics, which is the A of our cat. So next slide here. And when I talk about aesthetics, I'm not talking about, how pretty your poster is, because beauty is in the eye of the beholder when it comes to aesthetics. But what we talk about is sort of approaches that you can take in order to make sure that your poster looks good. And I'm not going to go through all of these, but on the next slide, we use another acronym, CRAP, which comes from a book called the Non-Designer's Design Book. And we talk about contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. And these are four different uh, design considerations that you need to make. So contrast, thinking about things like hierarchy and legibility; repetition, talking about making sure that the design choices you make repeat so that there's clear coherence throughout your poster; alignment, probably one of the biggest things we just kind of generally work with in posters, because a lot of times people forget to zoom in and they can't see something that's, might be slightly out of alignment. And then they go to print their poster and, you're like, oh, shoot, those things are just off from each other. And then talking about proximity, which is about like using negative space or, using, the white space or blank space to make sure that you're not overwhelming your audience with just a ton of text on your poster. We know that posters need text on them. We understand that. And I mean, I will always say that posters need less text than what we always put on there. And so finding ways to shorten it a little bit and make it more, easy to read. But we also provide a couple of examples, which we have on our website, and I'll show you where these are. So this is, we're in the current process of updating them, but this is our poster on posters. This is one that has what we call bounding boxes. So it's got a colorful background with white text. We also have a similar version, which is with white background, so less visible boxes, but has the same content to it. We also do talk a little bit about this concept, and I hate what they call it. It's called the better poster. I like calling it the creative poster, which is this idea where people put their most important information very large on the poster and then have smaller information around the poster, but it really does draw the eye to what is the main point, brings people to the poster, and then gives them information along the sides. So these are all, well, I would say I believe this one and this one. So we have, oh, sorry, I forgot to say next slide. Sorry, we have this poster, just the one with the boxes, and then the next one, which is the one with the not boxes, and then, sorry, the next one, which is the better posters. And the second and third ones that I just went through are both actually printed in Design Lab, which is really helpful for some people because we put the text size on them. So for people who are maybe not exactly as familiar with doing posters, you can really see, like, this is what a 100-point font looks like when it's printed, because a lot of people are really scared of getting the sizes gigantic, which they do need to be on posters because people are looking at them from that distance. Next slide. We do also talk about technical things in Design Lab. So in this, we're talking about using the tools well. So next slide is we talk about different kinds of poster development software. So if you've never done a poster before, we can talk you through the benefits of all these different kinds of softwares. There's way more poster development softwares out there than what we have listed here, but these are the ones that we usually recommend, PowerPoint being the industry standard. Next slide. We also talk about, if folks have never done a poster before, how to size it in PowerPoint, because if you've never changed the size in a PowerPoint before, it's not nearly as intuitive as you would think it is. And then the next slide, we also talk about ways to avoid copyright infringement and finding images. And then we also provide a ton of different resources. So on this next slide here from our website, we have the image and font database, which is where we recommend different kinds of places to find images that are Creative Commons Zero, don't need to be cited, things like that for people who need them. Also fonts as well, just hundreds of fonts. We also talk in the technical about preparing for disaster. One of the next things on the next slide is, making sure that you don't forget to bring a backup of your poster to a conference. So not just talking about, obviously the poster itself, but remembering that, sometimes travel disasters happen and you got to remember that you got to bring a copy of your poster in a digital form in case for some reason you have to print it again. We all hope that that doesn't happen, but, posters can get damaged in travel. And then next, we also are a place for people to practice with their posters. So if you are somebody who's really uncomfortable talking to people and you're like, I'm not really sure how to do this, or I really, want to practice talking to somebody about my poster, you can come in with your poster and just talk to our staff, and they'll ask you questions and provide, feedback for you so that you can feel comfortable in presenting. So again, next slide, this is, again, our language that we use, cat and crap. And I want to also give you some resources. So next page is our Design Lab website, designlab.wisc.edu. Design Lab is all one word. And on here, you can make an appointment with us. We also have a chat and text service, which is available whenever we are open. We also have a ton of resources, and I will hop to those in a second, but the next slide, I somehow didn't do this in the right order. The next slide is our hours for the spring semester. So here we're located, our main location is in College Library. We have both in-person and virtual appointments, and then the chat and text are here. And you all will get a copy of these slides. And then in the next slide is our satellite location in Ebeling Library, which is on the second floor of HSLC. And we're going to be there this semester. The Tuesday hours are either going to be 1 to 5 or 2 to 6. We're still kind of working on those, but the Wednesday hours will be 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And we have an amazing staff, next slide, of graduate students in all different departments that are here to help. And then next slide. Sorry, I fly through these slides. I have so many of them, but here is our resources. So everything I talk about here and even more in depth is all under the resources under design tips and tricks. And then we also, under our resources, if you go to the next slide, have project-specific resources. And as you'll see, right at the top there on the right is the research posters. And that is where you can find examples, those examples that we have, as well as plenty of different recommendations, like our software recommendations are there. We have example posters that people have provided to us and all of that. And then if you'll go to the last slide that I'm going to talk about, because the rest of them are just repetition and some example slides, is that we also partner with software training for students. So if you are really unfamiliar with software or with the software itself, DesignLab can help you with a little bit of it, but there are actually people who are trained to do this, and this is their job. And they actually have drop-in hours in the main location at College Library in Design Lab. And I know you all are clinical practitioners, so many of you probably are not in the sort of realm of students, but they still will provide support to you if you need help with software. So if you're in Design Lab, yes, it is available for staff and clinicians. So all of this is available for student, faculty, and staff. Software training for students will help you if you drop in. They may not let you make an appointment because I think that you have to sign in through a net ID for that, but you can definitely come in and ask for help if you need it. So. Yeah, so that's it. The next slide is just design better again. But I want to open it up for any questions that you might have. And I apologize that my computer was having problems, so I took a little longer than I normally would.
That's totally okay. Yeah, we have a few minutes. If there's one or two questions, put it in the chat. We can read it out loud. If not, she gave you all of the contact information so you know where to find them.
And I also, I think, provided a a handout that I've given in the past, which is about infographics and posters. It talks about the difference between the two of them, but also has a lot of information that is stuff that we teach when we're doing workshops. So,
Yep, and everybody will get it at the end of today or tomorrow when we send out our email with the recording.
yeah. Yeah, thank you. So I'll just say Design Lab is opening on Tuesday for the semester. So we are on a 9-month contract right now, although that may be changing soon, hopefully. So we are open during the semester, the very first day to the very last day of spring, and then again, we'll be open in the fall. We do limited consultations in the summer, so if you were to say need work in the summer for a consultation, you can always send an email to Design Lab, and if we have availability, I can always do that. But normally, yeah, mostly in the 9-month academic year. So
Great. Well, thank you so much, Mandy.
yeah, absolutely. Thank y'all for having me.
Yeah, have a great rest of your day.
You as well.
Thanks.
Bye.
All right, so we're going to switch back over to my screen. All right, hopefully you all can see that, and hopefully the pixelation issue is done. So I realized I didn't introduce myself when we started because we just wanted to get going with the excitement of Design Lab because I wanted to learn more about it too. So my name is Jen Merems. I'm the scientific editor with the Institute for Clinical and Translational Research here within SMPH at the university. And we also have Leigh Ann Mrotek, who is going to be talking later after I'm done talking about presenting posters while I talk a little bit more about poster design. So I do have a little bit of repetition from what Mandy just said. So I'm going to breeze through those slides. Again, you'll have all of this information. So if you don't worry if there's lots of words on the screen, you can look at it later and get that detailed information. All right, so maybe if my slides advance, there we go. So again, just a little bit about what we talk about today. And then I also want to thank our collaborators on this series that you'll meet in the other sessions. We have individuals from Marshfield Clinic and then from the Department of Family Medicine and Community Health. So when you even start talking about posters, you kind of need to understand, how do you even make a good scientific poster? What is it about? What is sort of that basic information that you need? Well, a well-designed poster is there to help, give the information of your research effectively. You want the audience to sort of understand what you're doing, the key points that you are trying to make, and do so in a way that's effective and they can take home that message and share it with their colleagues. So you want to tailor your poster to the context you'll be presenting in. So you want to understand if it's a conference, if it's a research day, at the university, if it's, virtual, if it's in person. There's all these things that you have to keep in mind when you're thinking of how to make a good scientific poster and how you can effectively talk about your research. So you want to understand the size of the space, that can just help you understand the font, the size, the color, everything that's going to be happening visually. That is also taken into account when you talk about in-person or virtual. You can do more things when it's virtual than you can in person. And then the key thing is you want to know the level of knowledge that your audience has. If you're going to a conference that's very specific to your research, you can talk in a higher level. You can use some jargon that might be specific to your field. But if you're doing sort of a general science communication type research day, you're going to want to bring that level down for a general audience because they might not know the jargon that, is super easy for you and you just throw it out there willy-nilly, forgetting that a lot of people don't understand what that means. So these are things to consider even before you start building your poster. So thinking about size, there's common sizes that you can find, whether it's through Design Lab or just a quick Google search. These are the typical common sizes, but I just found out a few days ago with the poster I'm helping create, that's not always true. So you want to look at the event that you're participating in and see if they have any size requirements because it might be different than these common sizes. For instance, the one I'm working on, the board that the conferences are going to, or the posters are going to be put on, it's like 45 by 45. So it's smaller than this medium common size. So you're going to have to adjust your sizes depending on the physical environment that is there for you during these conferences. So I just took some screenshots of how to actually change your poster size. I know Mandy just talked about how she can help you do it as well. But if you need to learn how, here are some screenshots that you can take and take home with you and figure out how to do it on PowerPoint. And then just a brief little snippet on where you print your posters. There's different options throughout the university, typically at your library. So Ebling can do it different places on campus. Sometimes the conferences have resources telling you where to print. So just, check your university, your department, and then check the event that you're going to. They might have resources telling you where to go. So lots of options for you there for logistics. Not going to talk about this because Mandy just did, but again, lots of software. PowerPoint is the most common. So if we think about font, you want to consider both font type and font size. You want it to be something that's easy to read, and you want to think about using variety for different parts of your poster. So your header and your body. Commonly, people like to switch between serif and sans serif. So you can see in this example, we have your serif fonts with have the little hooks at the end of the letters. So that could be used for your headers, and then you can use sans serifs for the body. And so here are just some examples of what the differences look like between those two fonts. I'm not saying that these are the only fonts you can use. You can use, whatever fonts you like, but it helps visually when you have the serif versus sans serifs because it's just eye-catching and you can really be like, oh, there's a header. Oh, there's the body of the text.
Hello.
And then you want to make sure that your font is readable from a distance. So typically for body, you want to start with fonts that's like 24 to 36 point font, and then you go bigger from there. So here are just some general recommendations, 85 point for your title, and then that's going to be sort of the biggest font that you have, and then you're going to reduce from there. And then you adjust to fit your space. So we'll talk about this a little bit later about using white space. So white space and the font size is really important when you're designing your poster to make it aesthetically pleasing. And then try not to use more than 2 or 3 font types or sizes because then it kind of can be a little overwhelming and just look messy. So then you want to think about your color scheme. So you have this idea of what your font types are going to be, what your font sizes are going to be, but then we think about color. So you want to use about 2 to 3 colors. You want to have them contrasting each other so they're visually appealing and they're easy to see. One thing you can think about is matching the tone of your topic. So you can have brighter colors if it's something that's a little lighthearted, darker colors if it's something more serious. Don't have to do that. If you're, talking about cancer, you might not want, like yellows and pinks and bright colors, or you might, personal preference, but something to consider. You want to focus these colors in your non-content areas. So your box outlines, your graphs, your charts. We're not going to be changing the color of the text of the body. You want that to be, black or white, something simple. So here are some examples, example 1 and example 2 of just that difference between bright colors and dark colors and that contrast that you can see. And then just keep in mind when you are picking colors, you want to make sure they're accessible. So, colorblind friendly. And then keep in mind also that when you print it out, the colors might be a little different than what they look like on your computer. Your computer has all of these pixels. They look really, really great. But when you print it, they might be a little duller. So one thing you can do is just print it on a sheet of paper and see if the colors still stand out, if your text is still readable before you print it on that big poster. So again, we want to focus on this contrast. So think about a dark background with light text. You don't want to have a light background with light text because that's really hard to read. And then you don't want this busy background with light text because it can be harder to read, especially once it's printed out. So there's many options online that can help you pick a color scheme. Here's just one material palette. There's others that incorporate accessibility for different color blindness and so forth. So Google it. I put some in the resource guide that you'll get, so you can look at those and figure out what color scheme you like, and hopefully that can help you when you're doing your next poster. So you're going to want to avoid text. So I know we like to sort of make posters and add the text on how we would say it if we were talking out loud. But this isn't, a book. People aren't going to come and spend 20 minutes just reading your poster. You want it to be catchy. So less text is best. So aim for about 20% text, 40% figures, and then 40% white space. So kind of like Mandy mentioned, limit your words. So about 300 to 800 words. Your paragraphs that you're going to have, they're going to be about 1 to 2 sentences. It's not a novel. Just short, sweet, get to the point. You want everything to be legible from far away because people are walking through. They're, not right up nice and close. So they want to have something that's eye-catching that they can see from far away. And then if they need more information, they can step closer. So here's just some font to distance ratio that you can test out if you want. So here's where we talk about, leaving white space. It's very visually appealing. You can see in this example where there's just text everywhere. And then you can see the one on the right where there's white space. It's calming and it's more visually appealing. You're going to want to use boldface or italics when you're emphasizing words. Try not to use a different font type because, like I said, you're going to want to stick with limited variation. So 2 to 3. When you have too many, again, it gets too messy. Don't use all uppercase types because we're not yelling at the people that we're trying to get their, attention and teach them about our research. We want to talk to them calmly, and that means no uppercase type. And then we are going to use left aligned text. If you don't know what this is, great, because it's better if you don't. Just use the alignment that PowerPoint and Word does naturally. A lot of people change it to this center aligned text, which you can see in the examples. It's called like fully justified or justified text, I think. It creates these really large gaps between your words because what it's doing is it's trying to it's filling up the entire space of your text. And so if your sentence does not naturally take that entire page, it's going to add these really large gaps. And so it just gets really messy and really hard to read. So don't use that in any document or poster, please. As an editor, please don't use that. So now we have the sense of design. So now what do we even include? What of my research am I going to put on there? This can be challenging because our research could be one simple research question, or it could be the last 5 to 10 years of our life. That's a lot of information to include on a poster when we have 300, 800 words to use. So here are some questions to think about. What's the most important and interesting fact that we have? What would sort of blow the minds of the people there? What do you want them to take home and tell their family, their friends? Like, I learned something really cool. What is that about your research? What can you share visually? So think about what cool graphs, figures, photos, images that you have. And then what kind of information can you convey with your words during the poster presentation that you can eliminate from that poster itself? So again, you don't need it to be a novel. You're there also to use your words to tell them about your research, and that can be removed from the poster itself. So you want to think about your narrative and key messaging. So again, what's the purpose of your study? What key message do you want them to take home? So think about it. This could be just one point of your research project. It could be one result that you thought was really cool out of the 10 you may have. It doesn't have to be your entire project. And I know that can be hard because we'd like to talk about everything, right? But just think about your audience, what they're there for, what they're there to learn, and just pick what really inspires you and what you really want to share. Because that message that you want them to take home, you're going to weave that into everything that you have on your poster, the figures, the graphs, the images, the title, as well as the messaging you are there, talking about orally. So for your title, you want it to be catchy because again, this is going to be the biggest font that you have. So this is probably what they're going to see first and draw them in. So between 7 to 10 words. If you need more space, you can use a subtitle with slightly smaller font underneath. There's a couple different ways you can do this. You can tell people exactly what you found. If you don't have results, that is no problem. You can make it a question, bring them in, draw them in. Make them excited to learn more about it, even if you don't have results. And then don't be afraid to add some humor to it. Humor is great in science. I know we like to shy away from it, but it's a very serious field. We need to laugh every now and then. So you want to talk about your introduction. That's important. We need the backstory of your research question so we can understand your results. But again, keep it simple, keep it short and concise. Only talk about what's necessary for your results that you have on that poster. The methods, you can include them, or this is a good place to exclude. You can talk about this verbally. You could have this information somewhere else and link a QR code that they can look online. You can have these in a printout if you want and hand it to them. This is just a good space that you can remove from the poster. But, make sure that is okay with your collaborators, your advisors, your mentors before you just decide to do that, because they might think it's important to include. Then you're going to want your results. So this is obviously the most important part of your poster. This is what we're here for. So you want to make them very visually appealing. You don't want to overwhelm your audience member with how you have them on your poster, whether that's words or a really messy table or just figures that don't make sense. So use smart visuals. So you can see here we have tables in the upper corner and then examples of figures on the bottom corner. You can see that they're simple, they're visually appealing, the colors are nice, they're easy to read. There's lots of examples online, so if you're not sure how to represent what you have, Google's your best friend here. It can give you lots of ideas that you can hopefully then replicate for your own data. So all of these must have legends and titles so people can understand what the data is you're representing here. They should be only 100 words or less. You want these to be good quality visuals, so over 300 DPI. If you are unsure about how to do that, I could help, but also Google can help. It's pretty easy once you figured out how to, look at that, adjust it, and all of those things. But the learning curve can be kind of challenging at first. Think about quality over quantity. Again, your whole entire research career does not need to go on this poster. We don't need 100 visuals. So pick your favorites, pick the best ones you have, and put that on display. So your discussion and conclusion, this is typically combined in a poster just to save space. So you're going to want to, again, interpret your results, summarize the significance, like you typically would on any sort of discussion and conclusion. But again, the most important point, your takeaway, that is what you want to conclude. So yes, again, combine these, it's useful. So there's other things you can include, citations and acknowledgements. You typically want to acknowledge those who helped you with your research with this poster. Citations are typically recommended. It might depend on personal preference of your lab. Some people say, only include 5 citations. Some people have more. If you have a long list of citations, I would recommend printing it out and having it alongside your poster. Don't waste precious poster space on citations. If you have a few, great. They can be, nice small text, in the corner, things like that. And then I keep mentioning, having these extra materials that you can pass around. So have these prompts to find out more. This can be QR codes. Here's an example of a poster we did where we had 4 different QR codes that led to different things. Totally fine. Maybe not do 20 QR codes, but just enough where that key information that's needed is there and they can find it elsewhere on the internet, on a website, something that is safe and secure for somebody to view. Again, you can have, handouts. I know some people get crazy and they have a little tablet that's, playing a video alongside of them. If you do that, great. That one's not as common as just having a handout that they can pass along. So these are just common things that are included. These aren't required. It's up to you, your personal preference, the preferences of your, co-authors, your lab mentors, your PIs. So you can do a lot of things with your posters, and it's fun to be creative. You don't want to just look exactly like the neighbor next to you when you're standing there in your poster presentation, because you might not draw the audience that you want. So feel free to get creative and think about ways to highlight your messages. So I've tried to look online to see what UW has in terms of templates, and there aren't really that many. And which is interesting, because that just means that, you have the opportunity to be as creative as possible. But I know sometimes we like to have a template because we just like to have something that's there that we can input our stuff and be done. And we don't want to have to think about all of the hard work that comes into just thinking about the template itself. So Mandy talked about this a little bit, where you have sort of this classic poster template and a better poster template. So if you are looking for a template, check with your lab, check with your department, check with the institution that you have. I know MCRI has a template. This is the School of Nursing. Design Lab clearly has templates. You can always ask a partner, maybe a lab mate, something like that, who's already done a poster, to use theirs and just, adjust it to suit your needs. So there's lots of options for you to get a template, even if it's not like an official UW template to use. And then don't be afraid, again, to just be creative. There's some really, really great examples out there. This one is about cheese. But this would draw the eye if you're walking and be like, ooh, look at this big cheese. And then you can come in and learn more. And then you can get even more creative. This was a thing that went viral. I didn't put the year in, I forget, 2018. I don't know. It was a few years ago. But I think Mandy hit on this where it's like the most important point is sort of the biggest text, and then there's lots of small text around it and a QR code where you go and learn really the background of the information that is available. So feel free, to have fun with it if it's something you enjoy doing. Have those supplemental handouts if you're going crazy and really limiting the amount of information that you have. That way, all of your bases are covered. If they want more information, you're there verbally to tell them the information, or you can be like, here is this handout that has all of the information present, or here is a QR code. And then lastly, get another opinion. You want as many people to see it as possible so you don't make silly mistakes. I know I have made silly grammar mistakes on some of my posters that I wish somebody would have pointed out. But yes, with that, that is a brief, very quick poster design, and we're going to talk about presenting your poster with Leigh Ann.
Hi, everyone. I am Leigh Ann Mrotek. I am part of ICTR's Research and Protocol Development Program, but I'm speaking here today because I have a PhD in neuroscience, and I have regularly attended conferences for about the last 25 years or so. I have presented posters, I have attended poster presentations all along these years, and I hope to be able to provide some information that might help you. I actually love making and presenting posters. It's one of my favorite parts of the scientific process, but I do know that there's often a lot of anxiety about presenting posters. Usually our colleagues who are newer to the academic or scientific presentation world are assigned poster presentations. And so they're not really sure what to expect. And that's where part of the anxiety is from. So not everybody feels like this gentleman does who's on the slide. I don't. I love poster sessions. I'm excited by them. I'm energized by them. So I'm hoping that I can provide a little information today that'll help you feel better about presenting. Next slide. So most of what I have to say has already been, or most of what I'm going to start with has been covered by the Design Lab and Jen, and they've discussed some of these key points. I'm going to reiterate this a little bit with hopefully the focus on the presentation. So when thinking about making your poster, you should also be thinking about presenting your poster. Start with your poster by critically examining other people's posters. So luckily for most of us, we can walk around our academic buildings and see posters lining the hallways. Take a little time to look at these posters. Think about these sorts of things when you attend conferences. You can also take a picture of a poster that you particularly like to help remember the layout and maybe use that in the future. So when you look at these other posters, think about your poster. Do you have a lot of authors, or do you have just one or two? Do you have a lot of graphs that you need to show, or just one and two? And so look for posters that match what you need to do. As everybody has already said, what is the least amount of text that you can put on a poster and still have it to be understandable? Because you really want the graphs and the pictures to be the largest components, because that will bring people into your poster. Do you need a lot of colors? Are your graphs very complicated? If so, look for other people who've made posters that have complicated graphs, and how do they use color and which works. One of the things that Jen talked about was the size of the poster, and we're often told how big the poster board is that we will be allowed to use at the conference. Try to remember that those poster boards are likely going to be a butt to each other. So you want to make your poster a few inches smaller than the size of the board. Otherwise, all of the posters will blend together. One of the things that's very irritating is if you make your poster bigger than the poster board size, because then yours is going to infringe on other people's space. So think about the most important items that will be on your poster. What are you going to be pointing to? Which graphs, which graphics are you going to be pointing to? What words or numbers are important? Put those pieces of information where you can reach them. So you may not be able to tell from today's presentation, but Jen is about 8 inches taller than me, and she would put information at a different height on her poster than I would. So I have had to present posters where I've made that mistake, and I've been jumping and pointing to things that are too high on my poster. Also remember that you have to stand somewhere. So think about, you know, where you're going to stand during your presentation so that people can see the information that you want them to be able to see. One of the other things that we talked about already is that you will likely have other authors on your poster. You need to give authors time to review your poster and provide feedback. Do you know these authors well? If you do, then you can sort of plan for if they're going to give feedback immediately. If you send a poster to them, are they going to turn it around that day and send you some feedback? Or will they wait until almost the deadline? Or will they do it after the deadline? I had a co-author who was on my posters regularly for a while who always gave his feedback 2 days after the deadline. So I just gave him a deadline 2 days earlier than when I really needed it. And so then I wasn't spending all night, the night before I had to send it to the printer, making changes and getting feedback back to other people so that I could get the poster that everybody agreed to. It is also helpful when you have other authors to tell them what you want feedback on. So maybe you need to get the poster to your authors weeks before printing. And maybe in that case, you want to say, well, give me feedback on the content, the graphs that I'm showing, the information that I'm showing, but not the layout or the colors or the text size yet. And tell them why. I'll just keep working on that while you are working on the content so that this can be an efficient process. Next slide. In the week or two before the conference, you need to start practicing, especially if this is something new. So I like to start by practicing alone and then practice in front of an audience before you go to the conference, especially if you're nervous. If you can, start with a friendly audience, people who know you or are willing to listen, especially if you have to stop and start and say things again. It's great if you can present to people outside your lab, outside the area of people that you typically speak with, because they may know what you mean, even if you're not saying something super clear, and you want to be able to say things as clear as possible. So as we all heard already, you can make an appointment with the design lab and they would be willing to do it. And I will volunteer me and Jen as well. So scientific editing and research and protocol development programs in ICTR are also happy to listen to your presentation and help. One more thing about practice, it is great if you can practice before the final printing, because if you find when you're starting to present the poster that things aren't laid out in an order that you can smoothly move through your presentation, that still gives you time to move things around before the final printing. On the slide, I put prepare different versions. And what I mean is prepare different versions of your presentation, not your poster. One poster, multiple versions of presentation. So I like to have 3 versions in my head. And the first one is a 30-second version. So this is always a good place to start with people who are walking up to your poster at a conference, especially if the person looks a little busy or distracted when they walk up. Start with the simplest sort of presentation that you can. And if you interest them with what you have to say, then you can move into your longer presentations. So what should you include in this 30-second presentation? Well, the first thing you need to include is who you are and what your position is. Don't point to it and read it from the poster. You know who you are and you know what you do. So introduce yourself to the person who's walked up to you. And that gives them an idea of the level of person, the kind of position you have when you begin your presentation. And then a few simple things should be included in this short presentation. Your main interest or research question, which should be either in the title or possibly in the beginning of the introduction. That information should be very clear on your poster and easy for you to say. Then you should indicate your main result. Even if you have 15 results on your poster, you should have the main result that you're most excited about or most interested in. That's what goes in your 30-second presentation. And then what that result means and what you think you're going to do next because of that result. So that should be, again, about 30, maybe 45 seconds. And if the person is happy with that, they will just say thank you and walk away. Otherwise, they might have questions, and then you can switch into your 3-minute presentation. So this is sort of a middle ground presentation with a little more detail and the things that are a little more complicated. So plan this in advance. Is your background complicated? Is your analysis complicated? Are your results complicated? Which one of those things could really use some more explanation? And that's what goes into your middle ground presentation. Then you have the 5-minute or more presentation. So this is probably for somebody who is in your direct field, somebody who knows what you're doing. When you launch into this presentation, be prepared for a conversation. Don't just think you're going to talk at a group or a person. They are likely going to have questions about the detail of the data or the analysis that you did. So just be flexible and allow yourself to answer those questions. Also for this person, even though the presentation is longer, you may not really need to explain the background or the conclusions as much. If they're in your field, they sort of know what people are doing in that field. And you can just start with a very simple, this was my research question, or I like to study eye movements or something like that. So you're going to spend a lot more time talking about where your data fit, how your data work into the field, and less sort of explaining. So I have found in my history that a lot of people are scared of this presentation. They're scared of the person who's very knowledgeable walking up to their poster. But I'd like to try to change your perspective and say, these are the best people to talk to. They'll often help you decide what to put in the manuscript, or if you need to do a little bit of extra analysis in order to get that manuscript accepted. So you can really learn a lot from these longer interactions with people who already sort of know what's happening in your field or maybe even in your lab. So it's great to have presentations prepared for specific types of people who know the language well, but also, as indicated earlier today, you should have some plain language, especially in that 30-second presentation, something that everybody can understand. And you should always know more than what's on your poster. The next stat here is mental or emotional preparation. As I said, there's often a lot of anxiety with poster presentations. Please remember that most of the attendees at a conference are nice, especially if you let them know you're a student, or even if you're a faculty member, but you're switching into fields or you're doing something slightly different. Let people know that in the introduction. Most scientists aren't mean. They're not going to yell. They're not going to try to make you feel silly. Some people are jerks, but that's a lot bigger reflection on them than it is on you. So it's okay to be anxious, and it's okay to tell people where your expertise is and maybe when you don't have the largest expertise in an area. If somebody walks up and they sort of look at you or stand there like they're interested in your presentation, but they don't seem interested once you start, what do? You just shorten it. Just if you started in detail, just go to the bare minimum and go back to that 30-second presentation that you prepared. Another thing that often happens is somebody comes up and talks and talks and talks to you and asks 1,000 questions. You need to be prepared to politely move on to the next person, especially if you have other people waiting to hear your poster from the beginning. There's plenty of times where I've walked up to a poster and somebody's like in the end of the results or the conclusion, and they need to step it back. And so I need to wait for that next person to go. Be prepared to get email addresses if people have questions you can't answer. It's okay to not have all the answers, but a great best practice is to get an email address or some way to contact that person and get them their answer. At the end here, I have copies of your poster. It's okay to have hard copies, or as Jen was saying, to have a QR code so that people can download a poster or part of your poster. Next slide. When you're there on site, ready to go, what are some things that you should do? Wear comfortable shoes. You're going to be standing on concrete, possibly for hours. If you can't stand for long periods of time, try to scope out the area early and see if there's a chair, or ask the organizers for assistance. I recommend bringing water for sure, possibly mints or gum. And if you have a very long poster session, a snack. It's really important to get a good night's sleep before your post. Even if you don't feel like you're sleeping well because you're nervous, try to get a good night's sleep, because that will make the session go that much better. Next slide. Mentally prepare by being yourself. You were chosen to present this poster. You know the information better than anyone else. You made the poster. You can do this. Smile, be alert. The whole point of this is to advertise your work, but also to learn about the field. So next slide. And then don't take offense. Sometimes people are weird, and especially scientists are weird. And if somebody comes up to you and asks things in a weird way, just try to go with the flow. Next slide. Time preparation. When is your poster session? How long is it? Prepare for possibly standing there for an hour or 4 hours. If you're a student, know where your mentor is. People will come up and ask where your mentor is, even if you're there ready to present the poster. Next slide. Prepare for the logistics. Travel to the conference site. Get there early. Scout out the location in the poster session if you can. As we talked about before, sometimes there are 100 other posters. I've been to conferences where there's thousands of posters in a single room. And if you don't know where you're going to hang your poster, it can be very stressful, a stressful way to start. And then if you can, bring somebody to help you hang the poster. Often our posters are feet wide, and it's hard to hold both sides of the poster up at the same time. If you don't have somebody, help somebody else hang their poster, and then maybe they'll help you. Next slide. Preparing for the future. Think about reflecting after the poster session. Did you enjoy the conference? Did you enjoy presenting your work? If not, think about how you can rectify that. Can you prepare more? Can you have more lab members there? Maybe can you have less lab members there? What's going to help you with your confidence? And then what happens if nobody came to your poster? Again, reflect on that. Was it the session? Were you the last session of the conference? Was it the conference? Did you sign up for the wrong kind of conference? So consider those options, and then just try again. Were there too many people at your poster and you couldn't handle it? Can you ask more authors to be there next time? And then sort of finally, I just want to say is, remember, this could be a job interview. People, if you're a student and you're presenting the same kind of material, people will see you in conference after conference after conference, and they will have an idea of the quality of your work, and you can use that to help find a position in the future. So I'm just going to end with this cute little comic. And thank you for your time and interest. And I was supposed to leave more time for questions, but hopefully this is enough to ask a few.
Yeah, so if you have questions, please, you can put them in the chat, or if you want, you can unmute yourself. So what about for qualitative data? The data are words.
I can start with that one. I would say most of the time people will say don't put a picture on a poster that isn't data or isn't part of your results. But sometimes with qualitative data, you can maybe try to find some sort of picture or cartoon that represents that. And then, yes, you'll have to put some words on the page. If you could try to shorten that, instead of having full sentences, maybe having bulleted lines that can get the point across a little easier. Jen, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, definitely. I think Leigh Ann made a good point of trying to use images. So whether it is just like a little illustration to illustrate some phrase or point of that, I've seen that a lot with posters. They'll do like, if they're talking about like community something, they'll use like a community figure. And then they'll just sort of, it's hard to describe. They'll just sort of put like make it into like a flow chart almost to represent. But I think there's a difference between like making it, paragraphs versus just sort of stating maybe results that are words. So as long as it's visually appealing, if there are extra words, I think that's okay. You just don't want to overload your poster with words.
Jen, the next question for us is, when are QR codes useful, and is it okay to have more than one, and how big should they be?
Yeah, I think QR codes are useful sort of at any point that you have additional information you don't want to include in your poster. Anything that's relevant. You obviously don't want to include something that might be secondary to your research, just because that's a waste of space and a waste of time for your audience. So as long as it's directly related to what you're talking about, that is a great place to use them. It's definitely okay to have more than one. As you saw in a poster we did recently, we had 4. I think there could be too many when it just, gets a little excessive, and every other space is a QR code. But I think that's, you got to make your own judgment on that. And how big to make them, again, this depends on your poster size. So maybe take a look at other posters around you and get a sense of, size of text, size of figures. And if they have a QR code, get a sense of how big their QR codes are. They can be small, they can be big. It just depends how much space you have and you're willing to take up with that.
I'll just sort of add with the size of the QR code. If you think about somebody standing 6 or 8 feet away from your poster and using a cell phone, they should be able to get the QR code. So if they're not like right in front of it, you want them still to be able to get it. David added, with qualitative data, a well-selected quote can be a figure. You can make it look like a figure. And Linda also asked about putting qualitative data in a table, which I think is a great idea. Linda, if you have more questions and you want to talk to us, please feel free to stick around, but it is 11 o'clock.